greetings. Welcome all. We're so excited and glad that you are here. My name is Sage Morgan Hubbard, and I am a consultant with the Anacostia Community Museum. Welcome for Take Time Thursday. We are so excited to kick off our year of food at the Anacostia Community Museum. And this series of Take Time Thursdays on Thursdays in April will all be about food and food justice and preparation for our Food for the People exhibition opening up very, very soon at Anacostia Community Museum, but this time outside in COVID-safe ways. So please come out and be there. But for today, be prepared to learn and engage with the wonderful, wonderful, fabulous Dr. Anderson-Brown. Dr. Anderson-Brown is a mother, birth worker, food and racial justice organizer, consultant, and founder of Ujima Consulting Collective. Sade's PhD in African Diaspora Studies has inspired her to create The Breath of Blackness, a social media and programming platform launching soon that will focus on the expansiveness of Black people, culture, history, and experiences. Dr. Sade Anderson-Brown's food justice work in Wards 7 and 8 of the nation's capital culminated in her doctoral dissertation entitled Black Food Matters: Surviving Anti-Blackness and Food Insecurity in Washington, D.C. As a member of the Black Dirt Farm Collective, Sade helps promote Afroecology. I was trying to say it in a different way, but this is part of, we have to relearn, right? Because we're so immersed in white supremacy culture that we have to really think about, what does Afroecology means? And it's a methodology that assists in reconnecting Black communities to land, food, and healing. Sade has ample experience building connections across identities through gardening, cooking, political education, dialogue, and facilitation. Thank you so much, and let's give a warm Zoom welcome for Sade.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you to the Anacostia Museum for this opportunity, for having me. And let's get started. So as mentioned, today we're going to talk about African Diaspora Foodways, as well as plant-based eating and plant-based foods, and talk about some ways you can incorporate more plant-based foods and meals into your life. So first, I want to start with us doing a poll. I just want to kind of get a sense of who's in the room and people's experience and knowledge with African Diaspora Foodways. And we're going to start by doing this poll. Here we go. We're going to talk about first defining African diaspora, right? Let's talk about African diaspora before we talk about foodways. So I want folks to participate in this poll asking, where is the African diaspora located? I see some folks already chiming in. Thanks for putting it in the chat, Mark. So if you're on a phone, you're going to text to that number. If you're on a computer, you can use the link, the web address. So I see we have a few folks. It looks like the majority of people are choosing B. I'll give us another 5, 4, 3. Great. So for those of you who chose B, you are correct. The African diaspora includes, isn't limited to, but includes North America, South America, Africa, Europe, Asia, Australia. It's not just North America and South America. It's not just Africa. We're going to keep building on this knowledge today. So next, I want us to think about who makes up the African diaspora. If now we know where the African diaspora is located, who makes up the African diaspora? Is it just Africans? Is it just African Americans? So I want you to go to the exact same link. If you're on a computer, the exact same web address. If you're on a phone, the exact same number to participate in the poll. Who makes up the African diaspora? I'll give us another 5 seconds. Great. So for those who chose C, you are correct. Again, it's not limited to, but it definitely includes those who identify as Black British, people from the Caribbean, Afro-Latinx, African Americans, as well as continental Africans. Thank you to all of those who participated in the poll. And I'm going to take us back to the slides. So now that we know where the diaspora is located, who makes up the African diaspora, how did those folks get there? Let's talk about that. Here we go. How did those folks get there? So that brings us to the term diaspora. Diaspora means simply dispersal from one's homeland. So this is a map of just one of the many forms of dispersal that have taken place through African history and African diasporic history. Diaspora can be involuntary dispersal as well as voluntary. So involuntary would include things like shown here through enslavement, as well as voluntary, such as immigration. So as you see here, there was a mass movement, dispersal of African people from the continent of Africa. You see lines coming from Senegal, Sierra Leone, so West Coast all the way to Central Africa, being taken to the rest of the diaspora. So North America, the Caribbean, South America, Europe. You even see a line going up to Europe. There's other, of course, mass movements of dispersal of African people that happened prior to this with the East African trade, which many people are not as familiar with. And also, of course, forever, people of African descent and African peoples have voluntarily moved and dispersed themselves across the world for exploration, for trade, etc. So now that we've talked about African diaspora, who makes up the diaspora, where it's located, let's talk about foodways. So foodways can be defined really as culinary practices as well as cooking techniques that people engage in, right? So we have a video here. This is a video that I took in Ghana on my travels to Ghana a couple years ago of women engaging, using a very common tool and methodology of cooking to make pounded yam. And so you see they're let me play it again. You see they're pounding fufu. And so in addition to foodways including culinary practices, it also includes eating habits, the way that you eat, what you eat. So all these things are included in foodways, food preservation, the tools that we use. So today we'll be talking about plant-based foods grown, prepared, eaten by people of African descent across the diaspora, and how those foods connect directly back to Africa or to our African heritage. So Africa, as we know, is a continent, not a country, with a diverse array of plant foods that, again, are grown, prepared, and eaten. Across the continent of Africa, you'll find about 2,000 varieties of grains, roots, fruits, plants, vegetables, etc. There are at least 100 different grains, varieties. Pictured here in the top left corner, you have millet. Some may be familiar with millet. Millet is becoming more popular, specifically in the United States, as a health food and an alternative for those who can't eat wheat. This can be used in savory or sweet dishes. It's similar to quinoa in texture, but a bit more dense, and it has a mild kind of nutty taste. You also can find over 150 different edible leafy greens across Africa. Here, pictured in the bottom left corner, you have the amaranth plant, which many may know as the callaloo plant, found and eaten across the Caribbean. It's usually cooked down in oil and onions, garlic, spices, really delicious. There are also over 100 varieties of fruits across Africa. Here in the bottom right-hand corner, you find the cacao fruit pod, also known as cocoa, which gives us our chocolate, if you are not familiar. Many people know little of the African origins, unfortunately, but of course we know that chocolate is enjoyed all across the world, not just the African diaspora. And in the top right corner, you have locust bean. This is also commonly found across West Africa. It's used in everything from soups to curing snake bites. It's a very, very diverse plant. And so these are just some of the plant-based foods that you can find that originate from Africa that are also staples across the African diaspora and across cultures worldwide. So here you have pictured the cowpea, also known as the black-eyed pea. Type in the chat if you knew that black-eyed peas come from the diaspora. So this particular legume has been grown, prepared, and eaten in Africa for millennia. It's actually one of the oldest crops to ever be farmed. Cowpeas were taken by enslaved Africans. Remember the map that we showed? So when Africans were kidnapped and captured in Africa, they brought many of their seeds as well as live plants and foods on those ships. Those who captured them brought those on the ships, and they made their way to the rest of the diaspora. Hence why we have so many of these foods across that African diaspora now. So cowpeas are great in protein, iron, zinc, and they're low in fat, and they're high in dietary fiber. So here you have two preparations of cowpeas. The upper top, you have them stewed. The bottom, you have them fried. So on the left-hand side, you have a picture of a Ghanaian dish called red. And it's basically black-eyed peas stewed down in tomatoes, red peppers, onions, garlic, and most importantly, palm oil. Palm oil is a staple in African and African diaspora cooking. Below that, you have something called ankara, which across West Africa, that name is used amongst many others. It's essentially a black-eyed pea fritter. You cook the black-eyed peas, you ground them or mash them up into a paste. You add onions, garlic, seasonings, form them into little patties or balls, and you deep fry them in palm oil. Really, really delicious if you haven't had them before. In the top right-hand corner, you have something called feijão. Feijão, veggie is black-eyed peas. This dish comes from Brazil. Specifically, this is an Afro-Brazilian dish. And if you can see in the picture, that yellow, grainy kind of condiment sprinkled different places, that's something in Brazil, which is called farofa. But in Ghana, you see on the left-hand side, it's not as yellow, but it's the same thing. It's called gari. It's toasted cassava flour, and it's usually topped on a lot of dishes, both in West Africa as well as in Afro-Brazilian cooking. So you see the connections immediately. Below that, you have the iconic acarajé. Acarajés are also black-eyed pea fritters, but in Brazil, they make them larger and they slice them open and stuff them with various things. Traditionally, they're stuffed with a paste mixture made of okra and cashews. It's called caruru. They smear that inside. They have a cassava paste as well called vatapá. They put inside along with shrimp and a fresh tomato salad. That's the traditional Akaraje combination. So again, you can see if you didn't have these labels, you may not be able to tell where these dishes came from. Next, you see we have okra. Okra is native to present day Ethiopia. It was first cultivated about 3,000 years ago. It eventually spread to North Africa and then to Western Africa. It also was brought with enslaved Africans through the transatlantic to this hemisphere, North and South America, including the Caribbean, as early as the 1600s. Okra is rich in many things, including magnesium, folate, fiber, antioxidants, vitamin C, vitamin A, and vitamin K. It also can help to control your blood sugar as well as improve your heart health. So here we also have two iconic dishes. At the top, you see we have okra stew, commonly served, as you see that ball in the middle, with fufu, either of pounded yam, plantain, or cassava. It's made with okra, also called okra, with greens, smoked meats, dried shrimp or fish, tomatoes, peppers, palm oil, again, a staple. And then underneath, which you can obviously visually see, also another direct connection and lineage to Africa, you have gumbo. This is one of my personal favorite vegan dishes, vegan gumbo. My husband makes it really well because his mother's from Texas. And it's really easy to substitute out the smoked meats, the dried fish and shrimp, and use things such as liquid smoke and spices that can replicate kind of that rich, deep taste, as well as, of course, we all know the roux is the most important part of gumbo. And so getting that dark roux really gives it a rich flavor, and you really don't even miss the meat, including things like black eyed peas and okra, again, staples from Africa, in a vegan gumbo can really make a delicious meal. So here you can see the citron melon, also called sama. It's native to Southern Africa. But of course, we know watermelons and muskmelons have spread across the entire diaspora, but also the world. In West Africa in particular, melon seeds are often used to make soups and stews. And of course, the flesh we all enjoy as a really refreshing snack, made into juices, etc. But a lesser known history of watermelons that I wanted to share in terms of connecting African and the diaspora is that post the Civil War, many African Americans grew and sold watermelons as a means of economic independence. However, white supremacists of the time were very threatened by this act of self-determination. And so minstrel shows, as well as public propaganda, was created to demonize African Americans and stereotype African Americans as watermelon eating, lazy, shiftless. And this is really where that stereotype comes from. So a lot of people, a lot of Black people, unfortunately, really turned away from growing watermelons, selling watermelons, eating watermelons. There's some generations today who will say, I just can't bring myself to eat a watermelon. But many younger Black farmers understand this history, understand these ancestral ties and connections, and have continued to reclaim and bring this tradition back of growing and selling and eating. So just wanted to give folks that little tidbit of history, and for all of Black people across the diaspora, enjoy your watermelon, sell your watermelon, eat your watermelon, and know that it's a part of your African heritage. Again, watermelon is of course, extremely nutritious. It's very, very water dense, so very hydrating, very good for your body, and it has very few calories. So you can enjoy it without any real concerns. So let's talk about plant-based health. Let's talk about what benefits come from a plant-based diet. So one is that you can have serious improvement in your cholesterol. For those who may not know, animal products, dairy products, animal byproducts can cause us to have elevated cholesterol. So eating plant-based diet or more plants will help to improve your cholesterol. It also helps to lower your blood pressure. It also helps with decreasing inflammation. Those same things I just mentioned, meats and dairies can cause a lot of inflammation in the body, which lead to disease, right? And so in order to decrease inflammation, we want to consume as many plants as possible. It also can eliminate added sugars, like we just mentioned, watermelon as a great alternative. Fresh fruit is a much healthy alternative to processed sugars, as well as it can boost your fiber intake. Fiber helps us to move everything through our bodies more easily. And the more plants you eat, the more fiber you can get. So let's talk about some more ways to eat more plants, how to get more plants into your diet. An easy way to start would be to have either one plant-based meal a week. You could start with a week, or you could start with one plant-based meal a day. A lot of people may be familiar with the campaign Meatless Mondays, which are a campaign just to get people to experience more plant-based meals. And it starts with one day a week, Meatless Monday. And you can work your way up to several meals a day, several meals in a week. You don't have to have meat in every single meal to feel full, to get your nutrition, etc. Another way is through smoothies. Smoothies are a great way to pack in vegetables, fruits, grains, nuts, seeds. All types of plant-based nutrition can go into a smoothie very easily. You blend it up, tastes great, and you've gotten your nutrition, much of your nutrition in for the day. Sauces are another really good example. You can add nuts, seeds, different types of oils that come from plants, fresh herbs, greens to your sauces, and enjoy a lot of different options with sauces. Adding greens to everything is something that I've done over the last couple of years. I've been plant-based for almost 10 years, and I'm always still trying to get in more nutrition. So I add my greens to soups, stews, smoothies, sauces, you name it. I'm adding greens to it as an easy way to boost my nutrition. Another way is to create veggie noodles instead of traditional wheat pasta. I myself am gluten-free, so I can't enjoy wheat pasta anymore. There are something called spiralizers that you can use that will allow you to create spiral-looking noodles out of vegetables, things like carrot noodles and zucchini noodles. There's really affordable device to use, and it's really fun, and you can get your kids involved, and again, add more fruits and vegetables to your meals. Also, really basic and simple way is to have more snacks that are fruits and vegetables. We underestimate the old school apple and peanut butter, bell peppers and hummus, all really delicious, simple options that aren't processed, that are plant-based. And lastly, making homemade chips. Kale chips really came onto the market as a whirlwind a couple of years ago, but you really can make chips out of anything. Root vegetables work really well, beets, carrots, parsnips, sweet potatoes. And when you make them at home, you can control the amount of salt, the amount of oil, and they still can be delicious. So I want to end my presentation with asking you all, what are some of the African diasporic foods that you grew up eating? I'd be really curious to know. Okra, I see some folks saying okra. Are there meals that you've grown up eating or ingredients that you grew up using or the elders in your family grew up using? Sweet potatoes, great. Couscous, absolutely. That comes from North Africa. Cornbread. Corn is not native to Africa, but maize has been in Africa for many centuries. So a lot of continental Africans feel like it's their own. Definitely cornbread is an African American staple for sure. Cowpeas, absolutely. Collards and mustard greens, also, many people believe that they are continental African foods. They are not, but they are something that we have taken as our own. Mustard greens, I believe, are, but collard greens are from Europe. But we have made them our own. Chickpeas, definitely rice. We didn't get into it today, but rice, there is one of the first varieties of rice came from Africa. And that is a major reason why continental Africans were brought to this hemisphere, particularly in America, up and down the southeast coast of the United States, to grow and cultivate rice because of the skills. Absolutely. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. I'm happy for us to have any other comments, dialogues. Yes, I have a resource list that I created. It is not extensive by any means. There's so much information to explore, so much information out there, so many amazing scholars who have been doing this much longer than me, that have written many books about the history and the movement of all of these foods, as well as folks who are doing a lot of cooking blogs and cookbooks that pay homage to African ancestors. Have you all learned anything new? Did you learn something new today? Have you discovered anything unique about African diaspora foodways?
So we have a first question as if you will be doing any cooking seminars.
That's a great question. I would love to do some cooking seminars, even with the museum. I am not planning any as now, but I'm hoping on my platform, which Sage mentioned in my bio, Breath of Blackness, which we can put in the chat. It's soon coming. I hope to have many guests on there, as well as go live and hopefully have some Zoom engagement as well, programming that would have live cooking, live discussions about various aspects of the African diaspora.
Great. So we have some more questions. Someone who said you did a fantastic job, which I agree. And what's your take on the term food alchemy or spiritual ways? Do they have much significance in the context of African diaspora foodways?
Can you say the second term, Sage? Food alchemy and
spiritual foodways and their significance in the context of African diaspora foodways?
I appreciate that question. That's not a term that I use, but I absolutely know and believe that there's many foods from the African diaspora that also hold spiritual significance. Myself, as a practitioner of African spiritual traditions, we use palm oil, we use kola nut, we use various things that are edible, but also spiritual, because we know that our ancestors also connected to those foods. So there's a direct connection there, and direct usage. So I'd love to hear the person who asked this question, what is that connection for you? And yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I think they said that they feel a spiritual connection when in the kitchen, connected by my mother-in-law, and grandmother.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
We also have a question about how you got interested in food and nutrition.
Sure. So I've been on a journey to plant-based eating since I was in high school. I actually met the first Black vegan I ever knew. She was a mentor and friend of mine. I was probably about 14 or 15 years old. And it really opened my eyes, not only to African diaspora foods, but just the lifestyle in general, and really looking at my own family's health and history of health, and having, like many people of African descent, because of the standard American diet, our families having a lot of high blood pressure and diabetes, and making the connection that, oh, I can change hopefully the trajectory of my future, right? In addition to my child's future. And so that really got me interested in creating it as a lifestyle for myself, and exploring and learning about plant-based eating and how to balance, and then as a scholar of African diaspora studies, making that connection. Hey, our ancestors were already eating all of these foods that we've grown up with. So it's really about us returning back to that, because we've been conditioned to eat processed food and hamburgers and hot dogs and things that we know are not healthy for us.
Yeah, we have a question around that, and people say that they often stress out about vegans not having enough protein, and the
Mm.
question was like, what are your main protein sources?
Great question. People ask me this all the time, and I can tell you that over 10 years, I have never had a protein deficiency, not once. I also am not iron deficient. I have family members who eat meat who are iron deficient. So, my main sources of protein are nuts, seeds, peas, lentils, beans. So we do a lot of black eyed peas, black beans, chickpeas, navy beans, any bean you can think of, yellow split peas, green split peas. I love cashews. I love almonds. We do a lot of almond milk, almond butter. So I'm usually having some bit of a plant-based protein at every single meal. And I've never had an issue.
That's great. And we also want to hear more about how you season your food without meat. What are the major spices that you use?
Sure, definitely. So, although for some people salt is an issue, mainly because a lot of people are using table salt. If you use things like pink Himalayan salt, kosher salt, salt is a flavor amplifier. So salt is not your enemy. Of course, you need to be using quality salt and not using too much of it, but it's definitely an amplifier. And a lot of people don't know when to salt in their cooking process, and how people are over salting. So salt, black pepper, garlic powder, onions, fresh garlic and onions pretty much go in everything in my house. I love coconut oil. I love olive oil. Really high quality of both of those, fresh pressed, organic. The quality to me definitely matters in terms of the taste. I use a lot of thyme. I use a lot of cumin, oregano, sometimes things like sage and rosemary. I also usually try to use a bit of, yes, sage, use a bit of fresh and dried in my cooking, because fresh herbs also amplify your food. Um, those are the main ones. I mean, curry, I curry everything. I love all different types of curries from the Caribbean as well as Indian curries. Um, yeah, those are some of the main ones. But you don't have to have meat, bouillons and broth. There's so many things that can flavor your food beyond meat, for sure.
So I think we have time for two more questions, and one is if you have any particular thoughts on the use of soy and tofu.
Yes. So I suggest that people do not consume extensively or excessively tofu and soy. Even in Asian cultures, they are not consuming soy and tofu at the rate that most Americans are, and the way that soy is overly included in so many products. I believe that it's okay to have it on occasion, but that's definitely not something that I try to include as a plant-based eater and make it a part of my, every single meal or every single day. I've been told by my holistic doctor that people of African descent, we shouldn't be consuming a lot of soy. But listen to your own body, obviously, always, always, always listen to your own body and experiment and see when you take out soy, do you feel better? Are you more energized? Are you sleeping better? When you eat it, what are you experiencing? Is always a good way, with any foods, a good way to see how your body responds.
Thank you so much for that. I mean, everyone's saying they want to have you come back and
Oh,
look in the chat. So this is really wonderful. And I thought it would be nice if you could end with some of your favorite recipes or some of the things that you go to for people who might want some easy first steps.
sure. So I say keep it simple. I think that yes, if you are a cook and you want to get complicated, great. But really simple things like making your beans fresh on the stove, having some, for instance, black eyed peas with some curried cabbage and carrots and some plantains. Or I like to make quinoa and red beans and coconut milk with thyme, like Jamaican style, but because I can't have rice, I use quinoa, or you could use millet as well, and have that with some callaloo cooked down, have some green banana, things that honestly a lot of us can still find in all across the US because we have international markets. You can find African diasporic foods everywhere, everywhere. But in the resource list that I gave, I put a lot of cooking blogs that are by African diasporic chefs, all types of recipes, very easy recipes that you can explore. Various people from the Caribbean, from Africa, as well as African American cooking that are veganizing or using plant-based. So definitely give it a try.
Thank you. Let's give a warm Zoom congratulations and thank you to our wonderful, wonderful speaker. And again, please come back for next week. We will continue this food justice series in honor of our Food for the People and Year of Food. And we're really, really grateful that you shared all of your knowledge today and that we hope people continue to follow you and we can have you back.
Thank you, everyone. Really appreciate it.